Chapter 91 of Married Thrice to Salted Fish. The Lantern Festival started in the evening. Lin Qingyu wanted to bring up Xiaolian's matter with the Empress Dowager and thus went to the palace early. Nowadays, there was no shortage of filial piety from the emperor, and Xian Palace was given the best of the best. Knowing that the Empress Dowager liked chrysanthemums, the emperor had especially ordered dozens of lanterns in the style of chrysanthemums to be placed in Xian Palace's courtyard. The sky was only beginning to darken, and the lanterns created a magnificent sight. It looked like a spring blooming amidst the snow. Lai Fu looked at the sea of flowers and said with a smile, "Empress Dowager, the emperor regards you with such thoughtfulness." The Empress Dowager was completely disinterested. "Although I am the emperor's imperial mother, there has been no motherly affection between us for the past 2 decades. He is merely making a show of all this. Besides, given the emperor's temperament, how could he possibly come up with tricks like these? Most likely, it was that eunuch who once again gave him the idea." When Lin Qingyu arrived at Xian Palace, the palace kitchens had just cooked a pot of sticky rice dumplings. The Empress Dowager was just having a taste of it with little King Hui when Lai Fu came to report Lin Qingyu's arrival. Treating Lin Qingyu as one of her own, she immediately told Lai Fu to usher him in. Lin Qingyu entered the inner hall and saw the Empress Dowager and Xiao Li sitting at the table. It was apparent that Xiao Li had been meticulously dressed. He was wearing a royal robe embroidered with a 5-clawed dragon, a jade ornament hung around his slender waist. The young man's features were of exquisite elegance. It could be said that he possessed unparalleled good looks, that his attractiveness came second to none. However, this young man, who was supposed to be of that cool breeze and bright moon, remained dull and sluggish. No trace of vitality could be found on his body. Lin Qingyu saluted the two of them. "Greeting to Her Highness the Empress Dowager and His Highness the Prince." The Empress Dowager said amicably, "Qingyu, you are here. Come sit down. Give Imperial Physician Lin a plate of dumplings." Lin Qingyu was not used to being called him by his name by people apart from his family and husband. This year, he and the Empress Dowager had found themselves on the same boat, and they have worked together to handle several matters that must be kept secret from outsiders. It could be said that the glory of one was the glory of both, and that the loss of one was the loss of both. Whether the Empress Dowager truly regarded him well, or whether this was all hypocrisy, it mattered not. She treated him better than even when he was Lu Wancheng's wife. Lin Qingyu declined. "This official has already eaten before leaving the house. I would not wish to disturb the Empress Dowager and the prince." The Empress Dowager said, "Then you can just eat again. How can a man such as yourself not be able to even finish a bowl of dumplings? Xian Palace has only me and Lear, and it's always a bit lonely. In any case, you were once my sister's daughter-in-law. You are Lear's cousin. You could say that we are family. There are no outsiders in Xian Palace. There is no need for you to be polite." Being that the Empress Dowager had gone so far to say all this, Lin Qingyu then decided to sit down as she had bidden him to. The dumplings in front of him were steaming hot, and Lin Qingyu tasted a piece. The outside layer was sweet, soft, and sticky. The sesame filling, though, was a little too cloyingly sweet for him. The Empress Dowager was attending to Shao Li, and she herself couldn't spare a thought about eating. If Shao Li was left to eat by himself, he would grab it with his hands and stuff it into his mouth. In Xi'an Palace, there was a Momo who was tasked specially with feeding Shao Li. The Empress Dowager too often fed him herself. As soon as the dumpling was brought to his lips, Shao Li opened his mouth and took it in. He then chewed it softly. Though mentally deficient, he did not at all appear clumsy or awkward when eating. Seeing Shao Li eat one dumpling after another, the Momo who looked after Shao Li smiled and said, "Our little prince sure does like to eat dumplings. Look at how happy he is." Listening to the Momo's tone, one would think she was talking about a baby under a year old. How could Shao Li be happy? His face clearly did not show any sort of expression. These kind of words were said only to coax the Empress Dowager. The Empress Dowager loved her son like life, and sure enough, she was coaxed by the Momo's words. She asked softly, "Does Lear like to eat sticky rice dumplings?" Shao Li opened his lips slightly, staring at the spoon in Empress Dowager's hand. "Call me mother and I will feed you, okay?" "Lear, say mother." "Mother?" The Empress Dowager said patiently. "Lear, here, listen. Mother." Shao Li seemed to be in another world, unable to hear the Empress Dowager's voice or respond to her words. Lin Qingyu said, "Although dumplings are good for you, one mustn't eat too much of it." The Empress Dowager dropped her hand in frustration. "Then forget it. Take all these away." Though unable to eat any more dumplings, Shao Li didn't cry or make a fuss. He slowly lowered his head and once again immersed himself in his own world. The Empress Dowager sighed softly and couldn't hide her disappointment. Lear will be turning 16 this year, but his mind is still like that of a 3 or 4-year-old. He doesn't know how to speak like other children. I don't even know whether I will ever hear Lear call me mother in this lifetime." Lin Qingyu said, "Is His Highness able to speak?" It seemed he had never heard Shao Li's voice before. The national teacher said that Lear has all 5 senses. He shows no reaction because his soul is not in his body. The Empress Dowager smiled bitterly. He also said that most people with condition have a bewitching appearance. It is fortunate that Lear is of the imperial family. I hate to think what injustices he would have suffered were he a no-name commoner with such a face. Lin Qingyu said, "The little prince is indeed very handsome." The Empress Dowager glanced at him and said, "Not quite up to par with you though. The little prince is young and has yet to mature. No matter how good his appearance is, what's the use? I would have rather he look plain." The palace maid took away the dumplings and served fruit to cleanse the palate and aid indigestion. Lin Qingyu brought up Shao Lian and asked, "Has the Empress Dowager seen Shao Xiang's recommendation regarding command of the Northwest?" The Empress Dowager thought back carefully and said, "I haven't. As far as I can recall, whenever Prime Minister She attended court, his attitude towards this matter was ambiguous, his words vague. It was difficult for anyone to get a good grasp on his stand." Lin Qingyu said, "I have read every letter regarding the Northwest, but I have not seen one from Prime Minister She." It seems that someone deliberately hid it in order to use Prime Minister Xue to fuel the flames among the military officials. Lin Qingyu and the Empress Dowager were well aware of who this person was. In the end, he's still unreconciled with being controlled. The Empress Dowager took off her finger guards and started peeling the citrus with her own hands. There is one thing that I have never quite understood. I ask Her Highness to speak freely. It seems you knew early on that he's the restless type. Why did you give him a chance? Lin Qingyu said, among the three sons of the late emperor, apart from the disposed crown prince, only the current emperor remained. I'm sorry if I were to support the little prince at the time, not to mention it is unlikely the civil and military officials would have believed the late emperor's edict. If the Shisha learned that the future emperor is mentally deficient, what sort of impression would it have made? And thus, our only choice was His Majesty. However, His Majesty had no ambition towards the throne. I needed Shirong to make his political advancements and achievements for him so that he could be pushed onto the throne without disturbing the situation in the imperial court. I understand. The Empress Dowager gently wiped the corner of Shaoli's mouth with a handkerchief. You have done a good job. The Emperor has successfully ascended the throne. In the future, His Majesty will have you and I to help him look after the country. There is no need for Shirong to continue living now, is there? Lin Qingyu smiled. What the Empress Dowager said is true, but Shirong is not someone to be trifled with. He has already drawn Prime Minister Xue to his side, and he is highly valued by the Emperor. By rashly moving against him, we might be beating the grass and startling the snake. The Empress Dowager snorted coldly. A thing without roots. If I startle him, then what of it? In the Empress Dowager's eyes, Shirong was nothing more than someone who's a little clever. Disposing of him wouldn't make any waves. She didn't know that Shirong and Shao Jie had been mutually dependent on each other for many years. Killing Shirong wasn't difficult, but if they were to lose Shao Jie over this, who they would have sit on the throne would become a problem. Lin Qingyu raised his eyes to look at Shaoli. His eyes darkened a little. It was true that Shaoli would be easier to control than anyone else, but in the end, he was a dullard after all. Right now, the Northwest was in turmoil. If he and the Empress Dowager supported another fool to ascend to the throne, he was afraid it would be difficult to reassure the army and the populace. At least, he had to wait for Gu Fuzhao to come back. Empress Dowager, Lai Fu stepped forward and said, all the princes of His former Highness have come to the Xi'an Palace to pay their respects. I shall go and see them, the Empress Dowager said. Xiao Zhao, you can feed the prince some more fruit. The Momo named Xiao Zhao peeled another tangerine and fed it to Shaoli. Shaoli pursed his lips. It seems he had no interest in citrus. Xiao Momo coaxed softly. Your Highness, please have another one. Apart from his family and Gu Fuzhao, Lin Qingyu has always been cold and unapproachable, keeping others at a distance. But for some reason, though he had only met Shaoli a few times, he felt that this dullard prince was amiable, giving off an indescribable sense of familiarity. Lin Qingyu said, allow me to try. After a moment's hesitation, Xiao Jiao stepped back and gave Lin Qingyu her spot beside Shaoli. Lin Qingyu picked up a tangerine segment and said, Little prince, open your mouth. Charlie stared at him for a while, then opened his mouth obediently. He let him put the tangerine into his mouth, a small bulge forming on his cheek. Is it sweet? Lin Jingyu had just asked casually. Unexpectedly, Shaoli revealed a reaction. He smiled. Shaoli's countenance was excellent, and when he shows a smile, the dullness in his eyes faded and they shone like stars. They could fascinate someone who had yet to see the world to lose their souls in them. Something unusually not seen rose up below the boy's eyes. Gu Fuzhao had told him about this thing, the so-called plump lower eyelids. Zhang Gongzi had said that in his original body, he too had this when he smiled. Unfortunately, neither Lu Wancheng nor Gu Fuzhao had this. Ooh, looks like our classmate Zhang has Doyun eyes. Having this layer under the eyes when he smiled, it really does look good. Shaoli only smiled for a very short moment, and his lifeless expression soon returned. It was as though that smile was an illusion seen by onlookers through dazzling eyes. Xiaojia was stunned, and it took a long while for her to react. She hurriedly ran to the Empress Dowager. Empress Dowager, His Highness smiled. When the Empress Dowager heard this, she lost all thought of receiving the princesses. She immediately stood up. Is this true? It's true. The servant saw it very clearly, and Imperial Physician Lin saw it too. The Empress Dowager immediately grew excited. Quickly, go and call the national teacher.